Welcome, welcome, everyone. This is the Smart City Community Club. We are speaking about the economic divide, particularly related to the recent, as of the 24th, we learned about the bipartisan infrastructure framework. Um, we are live streaming, so just wanted to let you guys know if you are in the room and want to speak, you will be recorded. We're streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Periscope, and LinkedIn. So if you do want to get the conversation after the event, you will have it available to you. So how about we do a quick round of introductions and we will get into the conversation. So, first and foremost, I'm Brittany Campbell-Turner. I am the CEO and founder of Constructor. We talk about all things that impact the built environment, from property technology to smart cities and workplace. Really an advocate for blockchain and how it can impact the enterprise structures. Um, but with that, we're really pursuing ways to improve payment cycles as well as collaborative contracting. So those are a couple passions of ours at Constructor. So with that, I'll pass it off to Marcus.
Hello, my name is Marcus Turner. As Brittany mentioned, I'm the other half of Constructor, mainly focused on shared risk, shared reward contracting models and improving knowledge transfer with using blockchain.
My name is Elan Friedman. I'm the founder and CEO of Kolka. We are a software hardware company that we make sensor to detect mechanical failures in high-rise and commercial buildings. And currently we are focusing on water leak detection.
Tony, please introduce yourself if you're available.
Hello, Tony Jones, a construction guy, advisor to a couple small startups and growing concerns. I'm happy to be part of the room to hear what we have to say and again focus on the 80 for 20 practical approach whenever possible. I appreciate everyone in the room. Let's get it started. There's a lot here. Tony landed.
Oh yeah, lots. Nastasia, welcome to the conversation. Please introduce yourself.
Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for having me up on the stage. My name is Nastasia, and I'm actually outside of the construction space, but I am totally now a fan of the blockchain. I've immersed myself for the past few weeks, and it is just interesting. So, always looking to see the new topics that come up in the smart city community. And this one will be an interesting topic because everybody knows that there is a divide, and I'm here to learn and hear what the topics are going to be and maybe have some input.
Excellent. Thank you, Nastasia. And for those of you who are in the audience, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Ngu. If you would like to speak, we would love to have you and hear your thoughts as well as you, Anne. If you think this conversation is exciting or intriguing and you may want to participate or have others in your community participate, go ahead and ping people to the room as well as I'm posting the link in the chat for those of you who are watching on live stream. All right. So, to get the conversation started, I love that you have your water picture up, Tony. We're going to get to that. We don't have to start off with it. But it's certainly a part of the bipartisan agreement. Oh my goodness, there's so much here to cover. But I will just quickly start off with we know that there's an agreement in place. The infrastructure deal, it covers a lot of scope items to be addressed. And just this sheer vastness of applications that they're really wanting to cover through this bill. I just said, wow, this is really covering a lot. But we do know that they have not figured out a way to pay for it yet, which is definitely something that will have to be approved in the near future in order for this to actually be successful. But really quickly to cover the items that it's addressing. For those of you who are not aware, the Biden administration proposed a $2 trillion American jobs plan, which included 175 billion in electric vehicle spending, 100 billion for the power grid, 46 billion in clean energy manufacturing, as well as clean electricity standard and broader clean energy tax credits. There was talk about ports improvement. There was talks about internet, broadband accessibility. I just watched a video that Biden did here, actually in the state of Wisconsin. I guess it was yesterday, talking about all the different components of what is improved, changing out the piping so that we have improved water quality. Um, I thought it was really interesting, trying to reduce the amount of lead piping so that it reduces the likelihood for behavior and any issues coming out of children being affected by drinking water with lead influence. So there's a lot here that we can dig into, but I just wanted to lay out really quickly that those are the areas that are being brought to the table, and there's a commitment to invest in these things across the U.S. So to kick it off, I'd like to ask a question. Hopefully, this gets your juices flowing. Where do you see the immediate opportunities for economic divide? So, anybody who wants to answer that question, and I could certainly drill down a little bit more clearly if you need me to change the question to make it simpler.
I understand there's going to be a lot of funding for housing as well in here for housing projects that may have HUD. So I'm a big believer in making sure those dollars affect the community as much as possible. So I would definitely put a moratorium on the use of, I call it simple HDPE piping, and go to real copper piping and other metal piping, which we know actually lasts longer and is better quality of water. Again, as we talk about it, but again, maximize as much labor on these projects to make sure we get close to 100% employment.
I just think it's interesting that it is 2021 and we still have issues with drinking water in a first world country. So that kind of surprised me, but I think it's good that we're shifting. But for me, the stance will always be education, because you can provide access, provide jobs, but if people don't know how to properly leverage the access that they have, they'll just be overwhelmed. They could be overwhelmed, or it might not pan out exactly how we think it's going to happen. So I think as long as people understand what's happening and why we're doing it, then what we're doing will make sense.
So actually, I may agree or may disagree with Tony, because I may not maybe I didn't understand him. You mentioned copper piping and employment. So first of all, I'm not sure that's, and correct me if I'm wrong, copper piping is a way to go. I think that, plastic piping, and you can talk about environment if you want, but plastic piping is a lot cheaper, a lot faster, and government money is not free money. We have to, as Brittany stated, we don't know even how we're going to pay for it, but eventually it's going to be paid. So it's not about free money to employ people for sake of employment. We want to get the most out of this money, these dollars. These are taxpayers' dollars, and we should treat it even more than we treat our own money. So let's take an example in my building. I live in a high rise, and we have a lot of issues in our garage because we have iron cast pipes, and because of salt and corrosion they rust, and this is for the drainage, and they caused leaks on cars and damage. So, but because of city code, we cannot replace it with plastic piping. Any other types of pipes is way more expensive, mainly due to labor, and it may not last as long. So I'm not sure if I think that we need to be as efficient as we can, distribute the dollars throughout all communities. That's rural and the city. But I think that my point is that this is money that we need to be very careful how we spend the money.
Well, I think everyone else is starting the infrastructure bill, taking bites at water. So I would love to look at the infrastructure bill in terms of location. How much of this is still break fix, i.e., are we fixing things from a passed on generation that should have been resolved? And how much is really looking in the future? Are we looking at other ways to improve how we use and transport water? Do we have losses within the system? That's what I really call an infrastructure bill that's actually going to stretch us forward. Other than looking at that, this is still a lot of break fix with a small amount of improvement in energy transportation and the movement of energy. I want to have that same kind of detailed view of water. Where are the losses? Who is responsible? And let's get to those. And as our friend in San Diego said, we still have too many cities that don't have water. Or that Sand Branch down in outside of Dallas. We've already talked about Flint, but more measurement at point of source and point of use is going to really tell us how bad our water quality is. But that's not part of the bill. So cities and states will have to do that themselves.
Mhm. I just want to welcome Emma Raleigh to the stage. I know you're just listening right now, but appreciate you entering into the conversation. Um, to your point about what is and what is not included, I did just pull up an article here around the Drinking Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Act, which was actually passed in May. That's the 175 billion over 5 years to upgrade public water systems around the country. Um, so if that's just public water systems, to your point, it's not covering um, everywhere, right? There's going to be so much more work left to do when it comes to local jurisdictions and municipalities. So yeah, that's definitely a gap. Um, it's something that I'm not deeply well versed with quite yet, but as I'm sitting here, I'm definitely doing the research, trying to get up to speed on particularly the water. Tony, looks like you've delved into this. Obviously, you're passionate about water, and happy to take it there. But yeah, this really interesting to understand what it takes to really get us to a point where we are looking at clean water. I do want to acknowledge your comment around housing, affordable housing, and then as well as Nasaja's comment around education. So let's go ahead and dig into the water topic a bit more, and then we'll carry it through to the others if you're open to that approach.
Yeah, I think we in earlier rooms talked about a large big data approach about water. Where are our waters coming? Where is it going? Who's not part of the system? Are the private wells not part of the system? Because with crisis, we need everyone to be on deck. This is what COVID's taught us. So we need the same approach to water. Who still has a private well? Can it be brought into the system? Who has cisterns? How well can those be used? Of course, at emergencies and fires, we need to know where every drop of water is. But now, when it comes to just how much available drinking water is, and we can't have just in time when it comes to drinking water, we need much more available. We've got to do a real accounting. And again, it's private partnerships, public partnerships. I come to you with a conversations and experience from the Irvine company. community in Southern California that said the most important thing we have to do as a city is to control our own water supply. So they built their own wells. They were never dependent on the system. And I think that's bad. We want to know how much you have and how much can you deliver should we have a crisis. These crises are coming again and again. So we need a large plan for how we cooperate. We need to know how much is there. Again, I'm not going to change the focus on water. I think everything turns from it. Tony.
So I'll jump in again. I agree with Tony that water is critical, and but I think that we're moving a little bit away from the economic divide. The water conservation is critical, as Tony said. How much water is wasted in the system when it goes from but until it reaches our tap, and I think that with the fact that we are not conserving water, that some areas of this country people waste so much water. We are fortunate here, and we are sitting by the Great Lake, one of the greatest sources of, or the largest sources of fresh water in the world. However, if you go a little bit further south, they're suffering from lack of water and, of course, lack of infrastructure and a lot of waste. And until we solve that, I see a lot of civil unrest because people need water to survive. If you don't have water, conflict.
Yeah, I second Nastasia's comment about like it's really interesting how this is still a problem, um, and it really is, as something that's super fundamental to living. Um, there's so much here. I do want to acknowledge Nineveh. Welcome to the room. We appreciate you entering into the conversation. What we're talking about today, and kind of just to reset, also for those who are joining us on the live stream. Welcome. We are talking about um okay, yeah, we are talking about the economic divide, particularly as it relates to the bipartisan infrastructure framework that was established and determined as of last week, I guess on the 24th. So we're talking about a lot of the different areas as to what's included um, in that bill for it to move forward, and the fact that we haven't actually figured out a way to pay for it yet. Um, the couple of the topics that individuals shared about is water, the um, water and housing development, affordable housing, education, and really we're just digging into the water topic about how it's not covering beyond public uh, infrastructure at this point. So just wanted to invite Amirali, if you're willing to hop into the conversation, and Anastasia to share your thoughts about the bill itself, and then what you see as a challenge for us to face as we're looking for ways to I don't want to say use up the money, but at the end of the day, distribute the funds, use the funds in a way where it's not creating a further economic divide that already exists. Spencer, I see you. Please ping Marcus Turner. And he should be able to get you onto Clubhouse. Yes, you do need an invitation to join. We'll get you into the ecosystem here soon. All right, so Amirali and Nineveh. What say you?
Hey, Brittany and Marcus and everyone else in the room. Thank you, Brittany, for bringing me up on the stage. I don't know. I don't have much to contribute to this discussion, but I'm more than happy to listen to you guys. So I'll be on mute and I'll just listen to you guys. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Amirali. How about you, Nineveh?
Yeah, I think I'm just kind of going through my Twitter feed and just kind of playing catch up myself, listening in. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a very interesting topic, especially around conversation about water and distributing the funds. And I really liked your point there, Brittany, on just asking about, how does that not continue the economic divide? I'm sure I'll have something to contribute momentarily.
Sure. Thanks, Nineveh.
Can I talk about something else besides water, or we're still on?
Elan, yes, absolutely. Share your thought. What do you have in mind?
So I like to bring it to actually something that we talked before everybody entered the room and tied to the economic divide, which is the internet access. And that's tied to education. It ties to, remote working, the ability to work remotely. Some people, if you don't have good internet connection, you cannot remote. So suddenly all of these potential remote jobs, the ones that you are interviewing now, you don't have it. So how can you be part of the new economic options that are out there, and how we make sure that people in the cities and rural people can have good, reliable, and fast internet.
Somebody please ping Anthony Very into the room. He is our IIoT expert. And he's actually working at a national internet company who is, taking some steps towards figuring out ways to do that. We welcome you, Mai, to the room. No, but we just had a live stream about this topic. There is a huge economic divide as is today. Um, excuse me. As it relates to internet access, and we talked about exactly the challenges that you're talking about here, Alan. Um, how do we get that? There are lots of opportunities, and we've talked about this in a number of senses. Um, there are opportunities to, trying to remember the term, but basically um, put micro internet access in rural areas or areas that have low bandwidth. And it's something that's not talked about very often as a stopgap until we have the ability to provide high speed internet to um, a, a broad coverage. So it's a matter of what we talked about in the live stream was particularly the things that need to shift is not from the design standpoint. It's really getting the buy-in from those local jurisdictions to see the value in it. So whatever that backup data is on maybe the need for EV charging stations that connect to the internet, the idea that you're going to have more citizens in your region that are going to be using these types of things, or even the electric vehicles themselves versus just the charging stations. They're going to need to be able to connect to internet while it's actually while you're driving on the road. There's going to be a need to, basically there's going to be a need for all of these IoT devices to connect with bandwidth in some way, shape, or form for business transactions to take place, or just consumers, citizens of the space to actually be functional. And so it's about talking with those jurisdictions in order to get them to buy in to making sure that this infrastructure is in place for internet in order for them to support their particular region. So, Marcus, I was having the conversation, but if you have anything that you want to add that you learned from that presentation, I think it would be really really helpful if you wanted to share. But I think those were, to me, the pieces that really spoke to how we could get a little bit closer to having coverage, if you will, for broadband internet access.
I know Anthony was mentioning that he's making some efforts since he moved over to Charter Communications. He's going to be making some efforts in that area, and that was one of the things that he was looking really forward to being able to produce. And I think Jeremy, trying to remember his last name right now, and I can't even remember the organization that he was representing, but I know it was based in Denver. That's really all I know about that organization right now, off the top of my head. I'm going to research it later. But he was mentioning within that organization that they have some efforts and some, as far as looking for rural communities, and he was definitely targeting a lot of the rural open areas that don't have the type of internet access that metropolitan like area close to metropolitan areas actually have, as far as internet communication. And I can kind of give some details, but I think Brittany, you mentioned the major one, I think, which was trying to figure out some low broadband access. I mean, slightly better than dial-up, I would say, but for someone to be able to access mobile devices, and Brittany, on your last call with Michael Lake, you guys were talking about low band access as well as being able to update your devices via telephone lines. I thought that was actually pretty useful as well. So if you have like a mobile device in your house or something like that, it'll just be able to access that telephone line and be able to update. That's no different than what dial-up used to be back in the day, but for some people, that is a motivate and innovation.
So let me add my take on it. So broadband is expensive, and in the rural area, it does not pay for the major players to run cables, to build infrastructure. So now we have Elon Musk that is doing his satellites, but that again now you need about $100 a month plus about $500 for the equipment. So if you're talking about low income families, it's out of reach. If you're talking about rural areas, again, I think that some of them are, not all of them are wealthy people. Some of them, and moreover, even I live again in the city of Chicago, and I live in the south side of the city. So if I go a few blocks down the street, Comcast or all of these players don't want to invest because most people don't have the money to subscribe to their services. So, and I'm sure you heard about it in Ohio. There was an attempt to restrict or to not allow cities to provide their own internet. Actually, the Republicans, after a lot of pressure, they decided not to do it. But until we take some of the money that comes from the infrastructure bill and enable cities and give them the funds, because it's not economical to have an internet that provide to the rural areas, to the deprived areas in the cities, those who don't have enough money part of our society. It's not a luxury anymore. And I think that once we understand that and put enough resources and enable cities to provide it, and not private entities that all they care is about. So maybe it's socialism, I'm saying, but the point is that private companies, rightly so, they want to make a buck. And I see that this is responsibility of us as a citizens to bring up those who can do it themselves, and of course then we all benefit from it in the long run.
100% agree. And I think, just to drive people to that live stream episode, if you do want to take a listen, if you go to Constructor, that's constructableR.com, and you click live streams, you can just scroll down to the episode, What Does It Mean to Make Internet Access Inclusive? So we drilled down into this topic, and the conference that Marcus was talking about is the Mountain Connect conference. Jeffrey Gavlinsky, he hosts that every year. God willing, every time he's capable of doing that, obviously now. But essentially, it's to your point, Alan. There needs to be a voice for the citizens that don't have the ability to speak on their own behalf because they don't have the internet access to actually go to the platforms where people are actually asking for the feedback on whether the internet access is good enough or not. It's almost like when I put a request, or I call IT, and they don't have the ability to respond, and I'm telling them I'm locked on my computer, and they send me an email and say, we've resolved your situation, you should be able to log into your computer now. But if I can't log into my computer because I called you to resolve the problem, you need to call me back. Don't send me an email to tell me the situation's been resolved or my password's reset. That is the situation that a lot of people are living in. That complete disconnect and that complete lack of communication. So it's about figuring out those ways to advocate for the people who don't have a voice. And I think, to your point, it's about going to your representatives and saying this is something that we need, and trying to advocate for citizen and business, or tack something along to on top of the need for access to the citizens, so that it benefits the government as well. And I think, as long as you strategically present information and have the data to support it, and work the relationships and consistently do so, that's where you're going to be making some headway, whether it's internet access, whether it's water. But I think that was the biggest outcome that came out of that discussion that I had. But you guys feel free to make your own you have your own opinions about how that outcome of that conversation came about. I think we all in that interview, Michael Trampetti, um, Jeffrey Galvinsky, and Anthony Very, we all agree that there's so much work to do, that you could be working on this internet access challenge for years on end. And to your point, Elan, the companies aren't incentivized to build infrastructure in particular areas, but there are ways. There are ways to scratch a little corner here and there, and make steps forward by working to incentivize local jurisdictions. So that's my
I think
thought. Go ahead,
Brittany.
Marcus.
I'm sorry, Brittany. One of my thoughts on that is we have a mutual friend that works as a school teacher, and some of the schools that he actually worked at were at that time they were considered at-risk schools. They don't call it that anymore, but one of the things that he noticed, as far as being a principal at these schools and being at different levels at these schools, a lot of his coworkers, when we're talking about you having to work from home, this is in the city of Chicago, where they didn't have access to laptops. And so the schools had to buy additional laptops. They didn't have access to the internet. So they had to figure out ways to find different internet access to go to. Some of them had to go to nearby local McDonald's, which was helpful, but not really a way that you want to actually just hang out in McDonald's and do your schoolwork the whole time. I think it's going to take a public-private partnership, especially in some of these areas, and it's going to be a continuous thing. I think this pandemic has definitely shown that being able to access the internet, as far as the information divide, is the gap is growing even more and more. And to your point, when it's saying it's as essential as water or electricity now, yeah, it's definitely because it's being we're being so interconnected now with technology that if you want to stay up to date and you want to stay up to be able to access the latest information, having some type of cellular device that can access the internet is going to be very much needed in the future.
Try to schedule a corona vaccination without internet.
Exactly. And I think that's one reason why they started accepting just random walk-ins at some of these locations, because they realized that some people can't even have that. I know, Brittany, there's some other things for the report that you have.
Oh, I took a lot of notes. We can go so many different directions. um, oh goodness.
Hey Brittany, while you're doing that, the name of that podcast you were just talking about, that's I was just writing that down. That was, what does it mean to make internet access inclusive, right?
Yeah, that's it. You got it.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I find it flabbergasting that it's been 65 years since there's been an investment in infrastructure, um, led by the government like this. I'm hopeful that it is a bipartisan group of senators that has pushed this forward. So that makes me feel really good. At least there's been an agreement across parties to push this forward. So that means that there's an understanding that there's work to do. But even so, when it comes to these topics about like internet being like a normal like standard utility like water or electricity or gas, right? Like these things should be accessible to everyone, um, and not just accessible, but like a general quality level accessible to everybody. That general quality, divide or access divide, if you will. And I think that sometimes the ideas that are being proposed, have a lot of money thrown at it. Not just SpaceX; it could simply be infrastructure for a particular location, and it still not meet the needs. So curious as to your thoughts about that. I'm happy to go any direction as it relates to that. Bridges, infrastructure, roadways, airports. I mean, there's so much in this bill.
Isn't there supposed to be an announcement from Elon and Jack Dorsey on the 8th or something? So that might be an interesting thing to look into.
What's the announcement supposed to be on exactly? I'm sorry, I didn't hear about that, Nastasia.
Well, I've been delving into a lot of blockchain rooms, and I guess it's just called the B word event or something. That's what I've heard. I got to check my sources on that one, but it seems kind of interesting that you have like a multi-billionaire who's into like the internet with the Starlink, and then you have Jack Dorsey who's kind of into fintech now with Square. Maybe there may be a potential link up where, hey, we found a way to fund it so that it can be quote unquote free for everyone utilizing new emerging technology.
All I see is them announcing Bitcoin and talking about Bitcoin at an upcoming event. But maybe people use that Bitcoin as clickbait because I didn't go into the article yet.
So there's definitely something in here talking about how Bitcoin is incentivizing renewable energy. I'm looking at an article, particularly from BitcoinMagazine.com. But yeah, this will be interesting because to your point, it's not just cryptocurrency that clearly either of these individuals are interested in. They have big visions beyond that. But perhaps to your point, Marcus, it's a way to get people, investors, interested into their initiatives. Okay, something to look out for. Thanks for putting it on our radars, Nastasia. There's definitely more to dig into in regards to that.
Now, do we think the economic divide is increasing due to a lack of awareness of an economic divide? So, for example, like if we look at our circle of friends or even everybody on this stage, I'm pretty sure we're at a particular socioeconomic level. So, unless you have somebody who goes into those underserved communities, like actually makes an effort, it might be the person's perspective, whoever that may be, is that, oh, well, since I have internet access, I have clean water, I have lights on, and I have a cell phone, and all my friends do, clearly that is everybody because they tend to stay in their bubble. So, do we think that could be a potential reason the economic divide is increasing? Is lack of
I think it's maybe, but I think it's partially because people don't really care, and they some people believe that some people are responsible for their own faith, meaning that they did not work hard enough, they're lazy, you name it. I actually live in the south side of Chicago, so I'm very close to these communities, and I think that unless as a society we acknowledge that that we need to our benefit to help them out, it's not going to happen. And unfortunately, sometimes when people leave these communities, they turn their back to them and they don't care anymore. And I see that, and that even sadder to me, that people that came from this, so I worked hard and I managed to get out of it. Why can't they? And they don't go back and give back.
I can see that, Alon, because me being from the south side of Chicago, I could kind of have that aspect where you're like, oh, well, I left there for a reason. But at the same time, when I go back, I'm like, all these people need help, but how can I help them? And then it'll take resources beyond my own personal resources, right, to actually make some form of dent or even some progress. So it might be so overwhelming for some people that they won't even want to try. But again, it's like, well, if like that's what I love about Clubhouse is because I think a lot of us are sitting at home, especially during the pandemic, thinking thoughts, and you're like, I can't be the only one that thinks this way. And unless, again, because we have access to these things, we start going into rooms like this. I'm like, oh, look at all these like-minded people. So again, maybe it's an awareness issue, but I agree. Like one of my missions is to come back and revolutionize the South Side of Chicago and make it the affluent, like people reflect on it. Oh, you're from the south side of Chicago, Bronzeville, yes. I want them to have that kind of response when you say you're from like Hyde Park, or actually that's not a good example because that's pretty affluent, but Beverly or some other places,
South
right? So
Shore.
it'll take more of us, right? I guess that's what.
So the way I see it, one of the things that we can contribute is actually be the voices. They're, as we discussed earlier, they don't have the time, the knowledge, the education, even or the means to apply pressure on the politicians to get things done, and unfortunately, some of them don't even vote. So unless we that are, have the means and have the voice and the time, we being the advocate, I think that we can achieve a lot more than okay. So I go once a week to the to the community and doing something, but we need to drive the change in order to get things done in this area. That be south of Chicago, can be some trailer park out in the boonies someplace. All of these people that are voiceless and they feel that they nobody cares about them, and they get and we get them alienated because nobody we all they feel that they're on their own, and they left.
I guess everybody has access to the state representatives. Like if I go to the state of Wisconsin, I can find some emails and I can send them. Right? Like I but it's the question as to like how. And maybe it's the expertise as well, right? Like how do you go about doing it so that you'll be effective? I think the question you asked about like education, I think the awareness of what to do, number one is like it's definitely it's lacking in a lot of places, but I think it's also the awareness of like how can you do something that will actually make some headway before you like do two things and realize nothing is happening and then actually give up, because it's not as though people don't try if they know a little bit about the problem, right? But it doesn't mean that it's easy. And to your point about like the time, that's a big thing, especially if they're, low socioeconomic, might have multiple jobs. Yeah, that's going to be a challenging thing for you to get ready and prepped to advocate for internet access or good quality water every single day, because you got work to do.
Absolutely.
I had another comment to add there. So, like, I guess I'm also thinking about the perspective of like just the lack of education on both sides. Honestly, like there's not a lot of transparency. So, just coming from like I work, in data analytics, but on my free time, I love contributing back to society. I think that we all owe it, to the world to give back. And a lot of people don't know how to do that. Like, how do we make the problems that communities are having more transparent as far as like what communities need help with, or how people who are in those positions who can help um, can give back without having to go the extra mile to figure out ways to help. I think that's where I also see some issues.
That's a really great point,
Uh,
Nineveh. Marcus, what were you going to ask or say?
kind of to piggyback off of what Nineveh's saying is, and my own summary back to you, Brittany. Sometimes communities do want to help themselves, but at the same time, if they do not know if certain things are an option or those options even existed in the first place, those are so difficult. And that's where the education comes from. But on the other end, what Nineveh just said is, I don't even know where to go for those other people who want to help. Like they don't know where the problems area are in their community. And I just want to welcome John, Mud, and Keith in the audience. If they want to go up and speak, John, Actually, I see that you have reparations in your title. One of the things I actually can say about that that's rare is that my grandfather's family actually received reparations, and they didn't know how to value what they had, and now they lost that land.
That's such a great point, Marcus. And I'm sorry to hear that, that happened to those members of your family. It's such an unfortunate thing. And again, yeah, it kind of goes back to just that lack of education, or just not as much transparency, not knowing what your options are. I don't know that I could do that. And that's such a privilege to so many of us that do know.
Yeah, knowing the how and understanding that there are other options out there is it's it's tough, and seeing people lose things that they didn't even know what they could do to maintain or keep. Like, for me, like it's for me, it was really painful to watch, to see what happened. But it's now I understand. Now I understand how it happened, and now I can do my best to try to prevent it for the following generation after.
So I'm trying to tie it back to the economic divide and the infrastructure framework. But I think that we all agree that the issue is the knowledge and time. And as I go to the aldermen's meetings in the South Side every month religiously. So later on, when I want, and that require time, it's once a month, an hour and a half, 1 hour, sometimes 2 hours. Now it's virtually. Before it used to be physical. If you have 3 jobs, you have kids, and some need to be taken care of, you can't do it. So, and of course, now that I go every time, when I approach the alderman office with a problem, they would much more inclined to help me out, because they know that I'm going to be the next month and hold the feet to the fire if they don't respond. But so I think that we all agree that education and some idea of maybe even fair wages should be, if not in this, it's part of the infrastructure, because infrastructure, the way I see it, and maybe some of the, how the Republicans are define us as a more liberal Democrats will define us. Infrastructure is beyond bridges and roads and stuff. So it's nice that the Republicans agree that we need bridges and roads and maybe a few other things, but that's not going to solve the economic divide. They're going to It's going to help but not solve it. So the question is, to me, is how do we push, convince, and explain to other people that don't see eye to eye that it's not, if we're pumping money into the economy, into infrastructure, you know, education and fair wages is just as important as to fix the bridge that goes beyond, across a certain.
Hey, those are all excellent. How do we convince folks who don't understand the importance of infrastructure? And I was in another room, and a group explained it through an Indian phrase. It's easy to wake up a person who is sleepwalking. It's much harder to wake up a person who's pretending to be sleepwalking. So people who are truly invested in keeping other people asleep, or keeping everyone in a fog that these tools are not helpful. These tools would change your culture. I don't know how to fight that battle because it's very deep. When we talk about broadband, I would love to have sensors to know exactly how much water is being used throughout communities. But here in rural California, no one wants a smart meter, be that to show how much gas is being delivered, how much water is being delivered, and for other tools. But now that we have people moving all over the world based upon remote working, they still want those workers, those high wages to come to their community, but somehow won't provide a gateway for them to do it. And just huge satellites not enough. Tony.
I do find it interesting that the demand is going to be different for some of these standard utility expectations, quality expectations, because of the movement across the country and the maintenance of a remote working world, or hybrid at that. It will be very interesting to see how different locales are being held, having their feet held to the fire, if you will, depending upon who's in particular regions. Marcus and I, we relocated right before the pandemic hit, and so these are really good questions for us to ask, like, okay, well, what is what does the city of Sun Prairie do, and who are my representatives in my district, and what does it make sense for me to talk with them about? It's about just being in your being in your neighborhood, and like paying attention to what's going on so that you can make a difference. We moved into this region for a job, but there's so many other things that, like, we do care about, right? Like the quality of our food, the quality of our water, the quality of life, right? And so at the end of the day, it's about just being like connected to your community and figuring out how to whatever scale you have the capacity to address it. Unfortunately, we do have education in particular areas based upon like our backgrounds, our education, and our experiences in a work world, and we have a lot to bring to the table that a lot of people don't know about. So it's about bridging that gap, on both sides, like none of us said. It's a really interesting thing to think about. I do want to welcome Hiyabu to the conversation. Welcome. Oh, we have an Eritrean in the room. That's very cool. Coming out of New Jersey. Okay. If you'd like to share your thoughts, oh yeah, welcome. We'll bring you up to the stage for sure. And we're talking about the economic divide. Um, just potentiality that we have it now, but there's a potential uh opportunity to think about how to address it now that we have this bipartisan infrastructure framework in place. So that's the topic of conversation. We talked a lot about what's included in that bill, but do want to invite you, Hiyabu, hopefully I'm saying your name correctly, to the stage. And also, would you like to introduce yourself and what might you want to contribute to the conversation?
Thank you, Brittany. Yes, my name is Hiabu. I'm just at the beginning of my career path with regards to economics, sustainability planning. Right now, I'm planning intern at the Land Conservancy of New Jersey. It's a nonprofit land trust that seeks to basically not development, sorry, protect land from development. And I want to then use that model in urban areas to try to preserve land for affordability. And I'm essentially just interested in this because I'm a little late to the conversation, so thank you for that quick intro. But I'm interested in smart cities. I'm interested in the intersection of GIS and urban planning, and I just here to learn more. So I think as the conversation goes on, I'll just chip in where it feels comfortable. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing about what you're doing. That's really interesting. Yeah, we're all learning in this space. Each of us has different backgrounds that touch infrastructure or in one way, shape, or form. Um, so yeah, it's really really interesting to see the opportunities that we have in front of us. But it's about figuring out the way to do it in the right way, where we don't marginalize any particular communities, but have them in mind as we move forward.
I think you said something earlier in a past room about democratization or crowdsourcing things like water quality. If everyone eventually has a small tool that connects to the phone to not only to look at dissolved solids, maybe look at some other testing requirements. But we can all look at our bandwidth speeds. If all those things start to help, why can't that go on a Zillow while you're looking for your home? Is there Wi-Fi? The the community might say they're walkable, but it's walkable with no connectivity. These are things that would be very important for people to make decisions. I guess it might upset a few chamber of commerce who, on one side, want business, but on the other side, slow down connectivity for in rural communities. But again, more information is better for everyone. Um, I think GIS, as he said, put location with the data. Let me see where the gaps are, and how does that spill over possibly to other educational gaps? How does that spill over to wealth gaps? I think when you look at water quality, when you look at data speeds, we're actually starting to see, the cracks and the fissures surface them up, that there are actually gaps of other things. And it'd be important for a person in GIS like this gentleman might be able to show us those cracks, those fissures that are part of our American or worldwide systems that are in place. Oh, there's Anthony. He's about to go. I've landed.
Yes.
Welcome, Anthony. Welcome to the conversation. I know you just joined the room, but you were definitely mentioned earlier as our internet access connoisseur. But we've been talking a bit about the bipartisan infrastructure framework that was just agreed to last week, and all of the parts and pieces of it that we see as opportunities, but also having in mind that we don't want to make the economic divide any worse. So we've been talking about it from all different aspects, but definitely, Anthony, would you introduce yourself, and would you share your perspective on anything in regards to the infrastructure bill, and particularly the internet access piece as well?
Yeah, thanks for having me up. Sorry I wasn't able to join later. Business was calling and keeping me working a little bit later here in the Eastern time zone here in the U.S. Um, I'll just give a preface that all my information I will state is my opinion here and is based on my culinary arts training. And I will dive into the infrastructure bill. There is some dirty business that was at play that most people don't have any idea about. And this goes back to lobbyists and what they can do in our government. So, with the internet and broadband initiative to bring internet connectivity in rural and in urban areas that are underserved or not served at all, they're talking about using hotspots, cellular hotspots. They could be 4G LTE or 5G, doesn't matter. What's interesting is that the cellular carriers here in the US, T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, a lot of them, when they were building out their 5G infrastructure, they were laying and wiring fiber in areas that were underserved or not served at all, and they never went directly to the home. They could have, but they only were going to their macro and small cell sites to build out 5G. And now, because they could get money from the government to do so, um, it makes it advantageous for them now. But what's really interesting is they're getting opportunities to bring cellular hotspots and connectivity where there are cable companies that provide coax cable for high speed internet. Now, some of these people don't have cable internet because they can't afford it. Instead of reducing the costs and giving that money to the cable companies that were already there and already lined to the home, um, the bill did not do that. The government and all our representatives that wrote the bill did not understand this caveat and understood that what they wrote in the bill was the best way to provide internet connectivity. So there are some loopholes that are going to benefit some other big conglomerates already. And I just don't know how sustainable it will be going forward after this bill uh, and the subsidies subside. But after saying all that, I am a proponent and I have worked many years trying to bridge the digital divide. I know how important it is for people to have internet access way, way beyond when the pandemic started. So there's a lot of caveats with the infrastructure, um, the landscape, the terrain, and reasons why there hasn't been good internet in certain areas in America. And most of it came down to a financial model. And the cable companies and other ISPs and wireless internet service providers just couldn't get their return on the investment to build out in those areas. And the government has had several funds over the years to try to help, like the Connect America Fund. They had phase one and phase two funding. Then they had RDOF. They also had the 5G in Rural America Fund as well. So every state also has had tens of millions of dollars that they've been throwing at building out infrastructure to help bridge the digital divide. There's probably 4 or 5 nonprofits that are helping push this initiative as well, from Connected Nation, the SHLB, the CTIA, the NTCA, and those are and WISPA.org. WISPA.org is the Wireless Internet Service Providers Association. Um, these are all the companies that are bringing internet almost like Dish TV. They'll send it wirelessly to a small radio and antenna that would be mounted outside your home to bring broadband to people that way, where it's harder to run cable or fiber to the home. My name's Anthony Very, and I'm going to stop.
Thank you so much, Anthony.
Anthony, didn't they cut the RDOF down?
Go ahead, Michael.
Hey, Anthony, didn't they cut the RDOF bill down recently? I thought I read something that they cut some of that funding.
They did, and that was because of poor mapping and data that they collected beforehand. The company I work for now, Charter Communications, we were awarded some areas that already had cable and other access to broadband, and they wanted us to oversaturate that market or build where it was already built, and that was not part of the plan with RDOF and not the purpose of RDOF. So we weren't the only ones that found some ambiguities and problems with some of the census blocks and areas that RDOF awarded funds for. So that is where the RDOF funding is coming down in total funding because of some of these ambiguities.
So what's the next big challenge then regarding that? So if they redistribute the funds, because I've actually gone through some of the RDOF list of, and they don't even look to be legit companies sometimes. I'm like, so do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so the devil's always in the details. So you could have small no-name companies spend a decent amount of money to an RF engineering firm to help write the proposal and application to fill out to submit for RDOF funding. And the ones who knew that that was the way to go to have a professional application and bid put in, those were companies that won. This happened also with CAF funding as well. I won't name names, but I know a couple of them that did it and are way in over their head with the amount of money that they won, and they really don't have any idea, and they don't have the manpower to do it. But we'll see what happens.
Well, tell me who those are, Anthony. Send them over to me, buddy.
Yeah, we could talk offline.
Hey, Michael, just wanted to invite you to introduce yourself. We are streaming on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Twitch and Paris, Twitch and YouTube. So just wanted to give you opportunity to share a little bit about yourself. We did plug the podcast that we did a couple weeks ago, and mention your name a little bit earlier, but just wanted to give you the opportunity to share about yourself and whatever else you wanted to share about your thoughts on the infrastructure bill would be great.
Sure. Hi, my name is Mike Trampetti. I'm a 20-year veteran of the wireless industry. Help build out networks such as Clearwire, AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint. Probably done about 50,000 either new site builds or modifications to towers, small cells, DAS systems across the U.S. So, thanks for having me on the stage. Um, no, it's great to be back, with you guys again. I just saw the room. Yeah, I just was reading about the challenge of the funding, and I'm glad Anthony brought up about the component about people in over their heads, and that was a concern as I was going through the RDOF list. I'm like, and I would start researching. I'm like, well, these companies don't even sometimes look legit, and that's a concern because it is a big endeavor to roll out a network. I mean, there's a lot of planning. There's a lot of design aspect and permitting and zoning and construction and that's a big endeavor to take on. It's pretty easy to Anthony's point, not easy, but it can be costly to put together the bid. But then once you kind of get that money, you can be quite over your head, spend that money, and then nothing gets done. So I guess what I want to pose is then how maybe Anthony, you can answer this. Then how do we, how's the oversight going with that? I mean, companies like yourself, right, with Charter, they know what they do and they've been doing this for a while, and so we know that'll get taken care of. But it's those smaller firms. I'm like, well, you know, who's the oversight?
That's a great point. And I'll tell you, with Phase 2 funding, there really isn't that much oversight. This isn't the type of business that the FCC is in business and doing, is evaluating companies, what they've done in the past, what they're capable of doing, how many employees that they have on hand that are actually certified and trained IT and RF engineers. So this is a big undertaking, and so they rely on the applications, and they think that they ask pertinent questions, but who's validating those applications? Um, I know that they do some validation, and they look at what networks that they currently run or how many people they bring internet connectivity to currently. Sometimes the companies are DBAs or shell companies of other companies, so sometimes a little digging needs to be done to find out who actually owns them. Um, but I'll tell you, it's going to be um, suspect, and I know what an undertaking it is, and I've seen what some other companies have done in the past when they're underwater. They tend to use those funds, and we're talking millions of dollars, and they try to take shortcuts and buy other small ISPs and WISP out there and just throw up some new equipment in areas that customers were already paying for low bandwidth, but some sort of internet connection at that.
Just want to welcome Keith. That was definitely a pretty dangerous situation that you're mentioning, Anthony. But I want to welcome Keith to the stage. Would you like to introduce?
I'm Keith. I'm just an average Joe, nobody special. But yeah, it's I don't know. I've just been interested in American infrastructure lately, just like realizing everything's just been just crumbling, and like so. Yeah, I'm just interested in seeing how the bill will affect, I guess, America going forward. Because I don't think it's going to do much. Like just listen to what Anthony's talking about is like, I don't know. So
Yes, it's likely we're not going to see a lot of, well, it doesn't mean that things won't be done, right? I think things will be done. There's a lot of money to spend for nothing to be done. But it's going to be difficult
Well,
to
it
have tangibility to what will affect us as people. So, um, I think it's a good point that you're bringing up, Keith.
mm. Oh, there's one thing. Before I forget it, I think I just did. Yeah.
It's all right. You can bring it up again. Back to the GIS discussion. I saw a startup when I was going in at a conference that I went to not recently, but that was working with. There was multiple startups that were doing this though, traffic and following traffic and trying to figure out like where you're to help city urban planners figure out like where's the what they can do to help the traffic congestions, as far as either foot traffic or actual vehicles. But there was another company that tied it to um, air quality, which I found very interesting. And it was based in California. And during one of the forest fires, they actually the city actually used their technology to kind of clean up some of the air quality that was in those areas, as far as like making sure that like they weren't having as much traffic or anything else like that, and so it could be more comparable to other locations. So from the GIS side, that was one thing that I saw found very interesting.
If I could respond to that, I definitely one thing to add on to that I was really excited about is in New York. The Mayor de Blasio, he just announced that Governor's Island is now being turned into a climate change laboratory, a living laboratory, where the focus will be on environmental justice, and by that, more so on low-income minority communities that tend to live closer to flood zones and also closer to a lot of truck routes. Like in New York City, when the trucks, where you see a lot of trucks going around, the actual routing that they go by, they tend to go through very low income neighborhoods more so than they do high income neighborhoods. And so I think basically there's a lot of intersections going on, and GIS can help uncover that, right? So where does the sociological, the business, the ecological sort of impacts all collide? So yeah.
I like that.
Really, really
Uh,
interesting.
I just remember what I was going to say. I think someone said that we want to try to not be, I guess, partisan or get into like partisan, but I think that's nearly impossible because the way our political system has evolved, we basically allowed our government to not only go out of control, but just basically become this us versus them thing. So now it's like if you want to do like basic policies like build a bridge was like, well, Democrats, well, okay, yeah, we're going to do this. Then Republicans like, oh, we can't do it because that's big government and big government is bad. Now we'll benefit the Democrats. Okay, let's do this thing where we got to come together, and then we do a toll road, and then no one likes it. So it ends up being like either a wash or just a Republican light plan. So it's like, okay, well, I don't think it's possible for us to do an infrastructure plan without making people mad because infrastructure is inherently a government thing, and our political structures has been basically created to where anything the government does is bad, and anything that corporation does, I mean, a private entity does is bad, but still better than the government. And yeah, then it ends up being a mess. So you basically got to pick your battle, like which infrastructure I'm okay with, taking people off, because at the end of the day, it is going to be better off if we just bite the bullet and just build the thing that needs to be built, rather than trying to skirt around and try to make less people mad, because they're going to be mad regardless.
but we can always remind the Republicans what Mitch McConnell says: elections has consequences, and now they need to suffer the consequences.
I think Keith said a lot there. When we look at GIS, and I'm really happy about a person here have expertise. I'm going to throw out what I can see visually across Louisville. There are a series of bridges that connect Louisville to the outer areas. You can actually see derating, where a bridge that had 4 lanes of capacity has been reduced to 2. That's real time. And in terms of why does that mean something important politically, is if communities are trying to pull from urban communities to build new centers for commerce, why would they ever support rebuilding bridges that would bring more commerce into central Louisville? So again, as you look deeper into these issues, you can start to see, I don't want Louisville to survive. I want that commerce to move out. And as we look at private industry, people like Amazon, they're really going to start to do even more real time pricing. If you're outside of the spoken wheel, you're going to start seeing the real price. So again, that's what's going to start to show up. The further you are, your distance off of that spoken wheel is going to become real material. I just can't wait for them to add pump costs and those things as you go to further and further away from the city cores.
And to your point, there's going to be the private entities who drive some of these things for cities. Um, Amazon is a really great example, to your point, Tony, of wherever Amazon warehouses land. Like, that's a big deal. And it will drive infrastructure developments because they know the jobs are going to be there. They know that, I mean, especially now, right? They know that there's going to be a need for transportation to those locations and an investment into bridges, roads. I mean, just here in Wisconsin, the president addressed, we have 1,000 bridges that need repair, like right now. And so, but it's not uncommon across the board for anywhere else to have similar situations. So, very, very interesting comments and perspectives. I welcome anybody else who wants to respond to Keith. Um, would be open to that. Go ahead, Michael.
I guess it's interesting to talk about bridges, and it is frustrating that we don't take action until there's a massive issue that happens. I know there was the Minnesota bridge collapse. I was there probably last year, and I forgot what had happened. And you read up, and you're like, oh, I forgot. The reason why they're rebuilding these 4 bridges is because of what happened out there. And we fail to take any action until there's massive damage. We just don't like maintenance. Nobody likes to pay for it. Nobody thinks it's necessary. I mean, I probably know there's probably something recently that we all know just happened, the same thing, right? And so, it's just it's a human effect that we don't like to pay, right, to fix things, right? It's all across the board. I mean, no matter whether you're talking about industry with building things, I want to do it as quickly as possible and cheaply, or whether it comes to infrastructure and fixing it up.
The point is that we can compromise from here to tomorrow, but a lot of powerful people with a lot of money that have something to gain or to lose, as it was said about moving out of the centers and not fixing the bridges. But ultimately, as a society, we need to take care of the entire everybody and not be pulled by Amazon interest or by whomever interest there are. So, because if you go only by the rich and powerful, then the economic divide is just going to grow. We have a group of people who work for below minimum wage to fill the fulfillment for Amazon if they let them get by with it, and then the Bezos of the world are going to get richer and richer on their backs. So that's why we need a strong government that actually try to distribute the the funds in a way that benefits everybody, and those who can pay for it, and those who can't benefit until they become those who can. So if you're going to strip Louisville, for example, and don't build a bridge over there, what will happen is Louisville is going to be a city of very, very poor people that can't support themselves, and that's the cycle that feeds itself. So no, we do not need to compromise to make some sort of a toll road to appease some rich people. We need to make sure that the money is distributed in a way that everybody is get lifted up from and to close this.
I think one thing that that'll be a really tough pill for people to swallow. Actually, it is a really tough pill for people to swallow. Is that we built our country based on cars, and in order for America to become like at least a better country, we have to become less car centric. And a lot of major cities have like finally figured this out because they're realizing that hey, like suburbs are very intensive, right? Like I mean, like they, or rather, I should rephrase that. Basically, they don't. Basically, they cause a lot of tax strain, right? Like because they're not basically as all the land required to have a suburb, there's not enough taxes to support it and all the wear and tear on the road and stuff like that. Like the states, they can't create their own money like the government like the federal government can. So a lot of cities and states are realizing, hey, like we can't take all these wide sprawling suburbs anymore. So now they're trying to reduce the amount of sprawling suburbs and have more mixed community um, developments. They're downtown. There's more light rail systems being built. They're expanding them, and they actually find out, hey, like it's actually beneficial tax wise to have less cars, because all parking lots are like a huge waste of space, really. So I think that's the only possible saving grace in terms of infrastructure. Because I think someone said something. I think the other guy he left said something about them someplace reducing the roads, and that is a good thing if and only if they have the proper public infrastructure, or rather public transit infrastructure to compensate for that. So that way, okay, well, this is a 2-lane highway, so now let me take the train or a bus to where I need to go. That actually makes society more efficient and actually improves tax revenue. So
Keith, I was just actually about to ask that question to the group. I'm glad you brought that up because, and is it not a little ironic that bridges actually, in my opinion, may further the economic divide just because of what you're talking about? Just the different transit options, especially again on the lower rung of the economic ladder, you see more public transit use, and I might be a little biased because of where I'm at. Like I'm in the tri-state of New York, so everybody is taking the train, bus, light rail. It's very normal out here. So I sort of think of it as these bridges that are failing. Okay, we definitely need to address them, but I mean, I think there should be a paradigm shift as well. I mean, a lot of that is a cultural issue, though, because in this country, we are very car centric. And if you look into the history of suburbia and highways and just suburban development, a lot of it that is intertwined with racial, gender dynamics that are still present today. But I think that uh, bridges, I feel like we need to shift away. We need to shift away from cars, just like Keith was saying. And one of the things, and I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, Brittany, I think you and Tony were talking about the aspect of land and land prices and how that affects sort of infrastructure as well. Which is why, if you read in my bio, I'm a big champion for community land trusts. I think if you can control the land, then you can control anything that's built on top of it. And so I think we can sort of democratize those principles and get community organizing around that. I think we can see sort of the our infrastructure issues be solved from the bottom up, as opposed to let the legislators figure it out.
yeah, and I just think it's funny that at the same time they were saying, hey, like all these welfare queens, are tax burden. It come to find out it was actually the suburban population that was actually the real tax burden, and so that's the most hilarious thing I've recently figured out. So
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's interesting, you guys, what you're talking about. To me, particularly because I'm in a region now that doesn't have um, train access. I'm originally from Chicago. Worked there for the majority of my career, and 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, we moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and here we're in the city, right? The most urban location on this side of Wisconsin, and obviously Milwaukee is quite urban as well. But it's very easy. I mean, I can walk to the cornfield right here, just behind our house. We don't have the opportunity. I mean, we have a bus system here, but we don't have the opportunity to just hop onto, a train line and get from here to across town. That's just not accessible. And so to invest into that kind of infrastructure, those are the kinds of things that are laid out, are identified as opportunities in the bill to create additional train lines where you do see a lot of activity. I will call out that bridges do support rail lines, just so that we don't forget that. But yes, there are many for cars. But I think there's just something. It's just something that we need to recognize. What is the ecosystem supporting, and it's about how thank you, Chad. Appreciate you for offering it up. Just wanted to make sure that we recognize that full ecosystem. I think, Alan, you've been doing a good job of keeping us kind of focused and grounded. And how do we keep that access right to the people where it's most important for? Which it's leveling that playing field. Yes, we're going to have private institutions driving. One way or another, that's politics. That's something that's always going to happen. But it's how do you level the playing field for the average person? And I think that's something that we talk about often in this room when we do meet on Wednesdays at this time. So yeah, I appreciate the conversation here. Happy to hand it off. I don't know. uh hey, Yabu, I don't know if you had something additional you wanted to say.
Well, I mean, I guess to maybe to lead into another, to I guess to just roll over the conversation to another topic. I mean, I think again it goes back to the aspect of transit oriented development, and I mean, if, for example, you brought up Wisconsin and Chicago, because I remember years ago, Governor Scott Walker, who I actually met one time. I remember he vetoed a bill that would have allowed a train, basically a regional train system, a new train, basically a new Amtrak line from Chicago through Milwaukee up to I want to say Green Bay, and he had vetoed that. And I thought that was like, I feel like it's a certain political climate, right? Like in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, like the people here, part of it is probably the population as well. Like we have the population to support it, but the attitude from the politicians are like, we need to do something that is on a community level, transit wise, housing wise. They're not really. They obviously we accommodate traffic out here, but I think again it's like you were saying, it's the politics of it, and a lot of it, a lot of federal initiatives will trickle down to us, to our local and regional partners. So I think it's more about being aware of where we fit into that role, into the political climate, and what we can do what we can do with our voice. I feel like as if we can be analysts, we can talk about this as well, but we also have to be, vocal. We have to be actors of change. So, one of the things I'm working on now, I'm helping someone with is basically in New York, there's someone who's running for mayor, and he is all about expanding busways. So in New York City, they just expanded the first two busways, which basically means that an entire street where cars are illegal. Basically, cars are not allowed. You can do anything. You can scooter, bike, you can do whatever. But they have about 8 blocks worth right now throughout the city that are designated as busways. So I think it's more about just starting off local. I think maybe starting off local might be the best thing. So in terms of talking about this federal infrastructure bill, uh, the same way it trickles down, it trickles up. So
I'd like to remind everybody it's first of all, we still need bridges not only for the trains, but even to bring goods to the city. So the trucks that bring, the food and all of that. So now I'm not for cars. As long as you give me a place to ride my motorcycle, I'm happy. Now, the the point that I'm making that even that I agree with it. Urban living is much more economical from tax point, from services, from pollution, you name it. However, people still need to go out even for the weekend. So this coming weekend, I'm going to go to Madison because there's a nice farmers market. I'm going to check it out. So I'm going to cross a few bridges along the way, so I can make it. And people want to go out of the city too. So I go out of the city every few weeks, but we still need to be able to travel. Say goods and commerce from out of the city have to travel into the cities. So we need to make sure that we don't forget that, and we need to make sure that we don't make it difficult for people to move, because people when make it difficult to move, again, people are going to those who have are going to be in one place, and those who have not are going to get stuck in places you don't want. Like I think that somebody mentioned, I was cooking, so I wasn't paying attention. Who was that? But the truck routes are going in the bad neighborhood. So who can afford living, moving out of these truck routes? People that have. So again, we're increasing the divide. So we need to make sure that again the money back in infrastructure supports truck routes that outside the certain neighborhoods, so they can thrive and not be where we dump all everything. We have all the in Chicago, you go to the south side. So what do you see? You see all the polluting factories because the people that live nearby cannot afford moving out. So the infrastructure, the bill should support clean air and clean water, as we started, so the people in this neighborhood can have clean air, can have quality of life. And I think that's what I hope that this bill and the second bill is going to bring us to all in society. And there's going to be a lot of waste, and a lot of money is going to be given to some companies that are shady companies that build internet that nobody needs. But hopefully the majority of the money, with scrutiny with people like us, will be able to yield the results to close this economic divide, because as long as there's economic divide, ultimately we all suffer. And I'm done for the time.
Hey, to help the point on the Chicago to Milwaukee train line, in 1995, we had a very large issue in Los Angeles. The red line was on its way from downtown LA to UCLA, and the community of Beverly Hills stopped it. And listening to the meetings that were said, they said it would change your culture. Listen to revenues on the community. We won't get as many tickets. So, I mean, it's amazing when you have something that looks so amazingly true that should be a slam dunk that still gets stopped. And it happens from Scott Walker to Beverly Hills. So again, we got to find the right answer. How do we bring a mule to water and help them drink? I don't know, but I'm open for any suggestions. We're gonna have these issues again and again. How we get both sides to finally say, let's do what's best for our people.
As long as there's as long as transit is intertwined with housing, and housing is intertwined with discrimination and racism, then yeah, it's gonna be a long road. No point.
Yeah, I think you
I
have to
don't.
convince suburban people that hey, like the bus can benefit you too. Just basically have to what's it, destigmatize the bus, because there's really nothing wrong with the bus. Like man, a lot of times people on their phone all the time anyway. Like hey, get on the bus, you can go on your phone. There's very simple things people can slogans and to convince people like hey, like are you tired of driving? Like you don't feel like driving? Okay, get the bus. Like takes you right to your cul-de-sac, not cul-de-sac, but what's it called your
Division.
but the entrance to your subdivision. Yeah, take you right to your subdivision or somewhere near it. And a lot of people in the suburb like to exercise or walk anyway. Like hey, you get to exercise and take get a good walk in while you're on your way home. So the kind of ways people can do it is just like I think a lot of times I don't know, like people who are doing the campaigns and slogans are like out of touch with reality and with people. So like when they do these campaigns, they do like the worst possible thing, and they care more about social media and talking points. All right, all right. I don't know. So I don't know. I think they care more about the optics rather than like the practicality. And they care more about the practicality of just getting people to just to agree. You know, uh, like a lot of these policies could very easily either pass, or if they don't pass, it will cost the people who are hindering it. You know, but I don't know. That's what I've heard.
Yeah. So really quick.
Maybe if we tokenize the roads.
I like where you're going with this, Nastasia. I'll let you finish your statements, and then I'll
I
go
would
ahead and wrap
tokenize the.
up. Nastasia, go ahead.
Oh, so I was saying, because a lot of people won't do things unless they are incentivized to do it, right? Thus, like, hey, everybody should get vaccinated. And people are like, no. And they're like, we'll pay you money. Oh, okay. It's like you would think, right? Because it's for the overall benefit, but unless it directly incentivizes the individual, they will be more likely than not hesitant to allow something new, because most people they are against change. So, but for example, I think Keith was like, "What tokenize the roads?" So there's a handful of us that are blockchain students, if you will, and this idea of tokenizing things like real estate. And just imagine like you're selling an interest in a particular asset, be it land, be it a house, be it a road, right? Like I'm sure we've all driven on a highway, and it's like, oh, this is the such and such highway. Like we have out here in San Diego, we have a Filipino American highway, or you have highway sponsored by. So if you would go into the Beverly neighborhood, say, hey, so we were thinking about deploying mass transit here, and you can have a piece of the revenue by purchasing this token, because obviously if you can't fund it all the way through government money, you might want to fund it through personal investments, and that way they have a personal stake in there, kind of like a vote. And then they can earn something out of it that benefits the individual while also benefiting the community. So that's where I was going.
I'm really fascinated by that thought. I have to like spend more time thinking about it. But yes, I I love the thought, Nastasia. Back to the bus. I just wanted to call out one of the things specifically mentioned by Biden the other day was two things. Um, he called out the use of the train line himself. Like he uses the train extensively and does not prefer to use air travel. So I mean specifically Amtrak, and I learned that, and I said that's really interesting. So from that position, um, you know, I thought it was perspective that was tangible. Obviously, there's so much more accessible to him in his position. You kind of have to take in all of the perspective, but the fact that he called that out was really interesting to me. And then the other thing specifically called out in the plan was electric buses. There's a plan to address specifically utilization or putting in 35,000 electric buses in place. So that could potentially make buses more sexy, where people want to actually jump on them and ride them, and it's more of an experience than I'm just, hopping on the bus that has a different stigma, might I say, dirty stigma. That being said, I love taking the bus. That is a wonderful experience. You get entertainment. Not only do you get entertainment, but you also get the ability to like read and focus on your phone, and you get time back. It's great. So I'm definitely advocate for those things. So just wanted to comment on those couple really really great points. To wrap up the conversation, we typically like to ask what in regards to the smart city community, do you want to talk more about in the future? What did you like about this conversation, or what would you change? So, just wanted to open that up for the group that's here on the stage. Margie, you're here in the audience. You haven't had an opportunity to speak, but if you'd like to share your thought on one of those three legs, we'd be happy to hear from you as well. But we'll stick around for maybe the next 10-15 minutes to collect feedback from you guys.
I think looking at other incentivization um, structures, I think that would be something to talk about.
Yeah, I would like to bring this back to the blockchain city, Marcus. I mean, once we started with that conversation, I was thinking about it offline. I was thinking, I'm like, we can make this work. Every time I see Amirali, I'm like, where's my E, for my ROI for investing in said building and in the city. So if we can, that's a big interest for me. So I'm wondering if that can tie into how we can minimize the economic divide utilizing those infrastructure ideas we had in previous rooms.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe if we can think about it from like a gamification standpoint, or a gamified building or a gamified city, like what would that look like? And maybe that'll bring in some useful ideas. Maybe more. The Bitcoin building worked really well, but I do want to bring it back. But maybe more of like a gamified city. What would that look like?
We got to get
I'm
somebody
all
in here
about what.
I was just gonna say we got to get somebody in here from City Labs, and yeah, that's gonna help a little bit with that gamification conversation. Tony, I know I cut you off. Please go ahead. And Habai, Hiyabu, I know
Oh
you were
no,
coming off mute.
I want to break things. Yeah, I want to break things down to the roots. I mean, I want to hear from folks who are not like us, who's not at the table. How long does it take a single mom to travel from her apartment into Chicago? Two connections, one bus connection that's in the middle of nowhere. Why are transit spaces in some communities out in the middle of nowhere, not really connecting anything, and others are actually near the city center where you can actually move and you can get closer to jobs? Who's not in the room? And then again, the gentleman with GIS, so we can actually see what's the real travel. I can tell you my stories in Detroit. My mom having us three little kids, all heading to the dentist on the bus. It was 2 hours, and I'm like, my heart goes out to the folks who are still in that fight, and us as the intellectual vanguard are here to protect them, protect their time, protect their resources, protect their energy and creativity. This is what transportation really hurts: is all the time that's lost.
I love that you use Vanguard, Tony. I just wanted to say that.
So first of all, I'm amazed that Nastasia always managed to tie everything to blockchain, whatever the conversation is. Kudos to you. So a few things that actually I would like to talk about how we as a group can make a change. We can sit here and talk for an hour and a half and among ourselves, but how we, as Tony suggested, who's not on the table and how we can make the change so we can foster the change of the economic divide. There are a bunch of talented people on this stage, and I'm sure that you have some people listening, on other venues. So what can we do to actually to make it into actionable? And for the future, I would like, I think that's something that was talked about a little bit briefly and somewhat in this area is how do we use smart cities for maintenance? We have this disaster in Florida now with the building. We have a infrastructure that's collapsing, and as was said earlier, people don't want to invest in maintenance and prevention. And again, my business is partially in minimizing and prevention, but I think that how we, as a smart city and as a community, what can be done in order to using technology, using whatnot to make sure that people understand that maintenance is extremely important.
Yes, to piggyback off that. So yeah, I really definitely want to talk more about transportation and its interaction with smart cities. And for me, I treat transportation as a subset of a larger sustainable approach. So seeing how smart city policies and sustainability can be reinforced and mutually reinforced. And on top of that, the connection between blockchain and smart cities was something a little bit unaware to me. I was a little very much off my radar. So that sounds very interesting. I definitely want to get more into that as well. So thank you.
I'm a crypto skeptic, so I don't know about the what's called the tokenized infrastructure quite yet. I'm still wrestling with it, just the entire concept of it. But what was I gonna say? I think one thing that I would like to answer your question about like what I like to see in future. Um, I guess what do we call them, rooms or shows, something like that. 'Cause I just followed you, followed this room, whatever it's called. Um, I like to see more. I think it's one. Sorry, a show, a room about what's called smart cities, like basically a eco-friendly smart city. I don't know if you've done that before, but I guess do another one. I guess if you already have, I like to be part of that conversation.
Great. Yeah, we have touched on that. We actually talked about a net positive building that I just helped to design back in school. It had no budget, but yes, we definitely talk about that. Sustainability is a big topic in this room, in this club. And the conversation is a room for your awareness, Keith. Margie, we do have you on stage.
Can you say
Yeah,
that
no,
again? I'm sorry. I mean,
yeah, no worries. The
like it's
convers
like a title, as you said.
so really quick, if you see the
She was
house
saying
at
that
the
she
top.
built a.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Marcus. Maybe I misunderstood the
Yeah, I see
conversation.
it.
Yeah, you Keith, you're saying about the energy positive building that she designed, and it was designed and built. Is that what the question that you asked?
Oh, it was like the last couple of things she said I missed. I thought she was like I thought it was like a title or something like that. I was wondering if she could just repeat the last few things she said. She probably forgot by now.
Oh, I think I understand now. Okay, so what I was trying to say was the smart city community where the little house is next to at the top of the screen. You can click on that, and you'll see, that's the community, and you actually can see the events, any future events that we have planned, and we do meet on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. So that'll help you follow anything that's coming up in the future. But in relationship to the conversations, this conversation is happening in a room. So economic divide, bipartisan infrastructure framework. That this is a room. So I just trying to give you some tips on Clubhouse, just in case you weren't aware on the nomenclature there. Yep.
Yeah, I'm still a little new to it. So I'm an Android, so he just got in. He's like, "What's this again?" Like this.
And one more point to Keith, we talked about it last time, but you were not present. There's a difference between the money and the blockchain. These are two different things. So just to clarify, when Anastasia was talking about tokenizing, it's not like it's not the money. It's a system of tracking stuff. But that's a whole different discussion that I don't want to get into. Just to clarify.
Thanks for that, Elan. And you know what? We do talk about blockchain a lot. We actually focus on blockchain on Tuesdays primarily. Sometimes we talk about it in relationship to smart cities. But if you follow the Prop Tech club, we're also founders of that, Marcus and I, of that club. So if you want to learn more about it, so you can at least get that understanding and education, we're happy to have you there too. So Margie, without further ado, welcome to the stage. If you could just share a little bit about yourself and then whatever suggestions you have.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate listening in to these conversations. This is pretty much outside of my wheelhouse. Aside from the fact that my sister and brother-in-law are both architects, and I am huge fans of just like urban design, and I've learned from them a few things, and I think that it's a really important conversation to have, especially considering that like in the United States, especially it's much more politically controlled in terms of like development, which I'm sure is not news to anyone on stage. But like I was shocked when I learned that, and when my sister and brother-in-law like taught me that when I was younger. Um, and I really like to think about how these things can impact the public health aspect of the world that we're living in. But I actually had another I'm more than happy to continue discussing along that lines, but I actually had a weird question for anyone. That Elan, I believe is how you pronounce your name, with the kind of monitoring of buildings. Um, does anyone know if there's like I know we have biosensors in medicine. Is there any surrogate for that kind of for buildings or for infrastructure? Does anyone know? It's a weird question.
Alon can answer that, and so can Anthony. And Anthony can definitely go into pretty deeply about it.
At this point, I let Anthony because my hands are full of is usually a cook this time, so I'm cooking now. So Anthony, if you don't mind, if not, I'll chime in.
Also, I don't mean to derail the room, so if you want to tell me yes, go look it up. Like that's totally fine too.
No, so there are many diverse technologies that are out and available, and even getting into digital twins of buildings, so you could see in real time what's happening in a building, and it could be anything from energy consumption, utilities, water, natural gas, occupancy, um, temperature, humidity, CO2 levels, other carcinogens that might be in the air, and other particles to monitor that, light and how much light's coming in from the outside, from natural sunlight, so that you could adjust the lighting in a room or in areas where nobody's at, have them turned off. There are so many diverse options out there, touchless access control, um, all the different wireless communications that are in a building that are live, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, LoRaWAN, Zigbee, Z-Wave, and all your cellular options as well. So the buildings are becoming and being seen as live, and what can we do to monitor them, to make sure that there's no failures in any of these systems, make sure the indoor air quality is cleaner, surfaces are cleaner, um, nobody's going where they're not supposed to be in buildings and they're not authorized. So understanding where people are and if they have authorization. Um, there's so many different layers, but yes, we could get in. We could have a whole topic and room on this for a couple hours. My name's Anthony.
I'll throw in sundial that's already used on large telecommunication towers and on wind turbines to see is the structure bending. Those are on high expensive things, but imagine if sundial had been applied to the condominium in Florida, and then sensors that are coming, Anthony, that I would love to see are echo wave that measures how much water is being lost in a pipe system. Places like Chicago and Detroit are starting to use that. So again, I didn't know if we wanted to nominate firms while we were having discussion, but I clearly have a list of folks that I'm watching, and as they grow. Again, these are still small firms, but they've demonstrated at many conferences they're on the right way. We want infrastructure bills and others have a little bit of an X prize kind of model. We got to really push the edge. We've got to push the edge. Okay, I'm getting excited again. Thank you.
I'll add one more quick thing about the unfortunate circumstance with the condominium down in Miami, Florida. So a few other guys and myself, we had a talk about what happened with that building, and we came up with some great solutions within about 45 minutes. The sad part is you could have large enterprises gather together, have committees and form committees and consortiums on this. And it could take a half year, if not a year, to come up with solutions that we came up with in 45 minutes. It wasn't, even if they had the greatest IoT network of sensors, I take it back. If they did, there could have been automated alerts that could have got people out maybe in time, but they had audits and assessments done on these buildings even as far as 2 years in the past that showed that there was cracking and spalling in the cement by the pool deck, and even more recent as 6 months. And I think I just heard something earlier today that was even more recent, saying that these needed to be addressed. The fact that the owners and the property management companies of buildings get these reports and get these assessments and still do not want to spend the money. Now, there were renovations going on, and it wasn't addressing that problem. So they were spending money. So it's a little messy there. Maybe they could say, "Hey, we're trying to do some stuff. We couldn't do everything at once." But when there are assessments like that or audits that find errors or find issues within for buildings where people are living or people are working, if they don't take action or don't have a plan of action that is being validated and money is being spent to correct these, they need to either be fined or the buildings need to be condemned or shut down. Otherwise, you could see this happen more and more. If they know that there's no penalty and no fine, more than not, they'll push it off as long as they can.
So
Yeah,
let me
I
chime
think.
in.
Oh,
And Anthony, did you ever, again, I'm not trying to put you down, do you live or did you ever live in a large condominium?
Not in 17 years,
So,
but I have
so
before on a
okay, so
high
let me give
rise.
you,
I
so let me give you my experience. Yes, let me give my experience. I served over a decade as a board president and even longer as a variety of roles on the board of a 40-story building in Chicago. I just stopped doing. I left the board last year. We for 8 years I tried to get a facade and windows replacement project in this building. They had reports that the windows need to be replaced before even I moved to this building, which was over 10 years. The unit owners, so we need to have a special assessment. It was $10 million project. The unit owners fought the board and fought me, and some board members fought me nonstop, including taking us to court, suing us. Took years and years of internal fighting, and of course they will try to show that no, it's not necessary and all of that stuff. So unfortunately, just like the government, a board is full of politics, but people have different interests, and some of it they just don't want to pay because we talked about the infrastructure and maintenance. Some of them they cannot afford it. Some of them just don't believe the reports, no matter which expert you're going to bring. So I feel bad for the board at that condominium if they actually tried to move this project forward and they failed, because I was facing which report if unless we're going to replace our windows, we are in chance of a window falling out of this building because they're so old and the anchors will start rusting. That was still not enough to convince people until we somehow managed to get another person on the board that will raise their hand and vote yes in favor of the project. Of course, now everybody is happy, and of course we did the facade project, and they're really happy, especially after Florida. But that does not mean that we didn't have to spend years and years of fighting and legal fees to get it done. So unfortunately, because of the legal structure of condominium, it's not easy to get.
It's not. And the primary reason is financial gain. And when ownerships and boards have to spend money, that means that's less money that they're making that year or future years. And if you look, buildings are before the pandemic, obviously we know how much buildings appreciate in value and why only the rich really have the opportunity to own buildings and make even more money. They're a high valued investment asset. And what's really unique about it, but also it probably, this will open up some eyes, not a lot, because it's a hot topic in the media for a couple weeks, maybe a month, and then there's going to be some other event and people are going to move on and forget about this. But what I've always looked at, because I've designed and engineered some smart buildings from top to bottom related with the technology. 95% of my business was in new construction. The 5%, the one project I did do, there was an existing building that was like 45 years old, um, was because it was a smaller renovation that was being done, and I didn't really have to break open the walls and the ceilings. But the main reason the older buildings and the owners didn't want to was because they were happy with the money that was coming in, and they didn't want to spend money today and have to wait for their return on investment 3, 4, 5 years down the road. You might not even own the building at that time. Whereas the new construction, the building owners or the property management companies, they wanted that competitive advantage. They wanted that marketing and PR saying that they had some new technology or improved customer satisfaction or user experience. So it was a lot easier in new construction. But when it came to existing building owners, I totally agree with what you said. It is tough, and money is the ultimate goal with owning these buildings. But how long can these buildings really last? Um, we have buildings, I'm here in Cleveland, Ohio. We have many buildings that are over 100 years old. So, are we near any natural disasters? Not really. But it again, there wasn't a disaster with what happened down in Miami when that transpired. So it's a. I like having these conversations because I think people always bring up good topics and good points of view, and I'm always here to listen and learn and share some of my experience, just like you did, Alon. I appreciate all your input there as well. My name is Anthony.
Just to clarify to Anthony, I
Really,
agree with
Elan.
everything you say.
Apologies.
Uh,
I know we're getting ready to wrap up
no,
here, and I know I have to go. I actually have something pressing I have to get to this evening. You're more than welcome to start another conversation, but we will be wrapping up this one. Alan, if you have a really quick thought, we can wrap up with yours, and then we'll close the room.
no, I'm yielding my time to the next time.
Yeah, I just wanted to say real quick. Also, regulation is a huge thing. Like, because in Florida they have very lax regulations, and really, if the Florida government was able to condemn that place when they should have, we wouldn't have to worry about that. Then it'll be like the pressure will be, well, listen, either I pay for the construction now, or I completely lose the building because the government's going to condemn the building. That would have been also another solution to that problem.
Regulation usually doesn't show up until a problem happens.
Well, depending on because we have a lot of anti-government thing, like, oh, the government, does anything, like, oh man, it's just, it's bad. So it's really a lot of it just to do with the anti-government culture in a lot of states.
I'd agree.
But yeah, it should have been a policy prescribed like decades ago. But again, because neoliberalism is like, okay, well, we can't do it because government bad.
But Margie, there's a lot of different spaces out there. Seeing that smart buildings was the hot topic for this conversation. I'm probably going to nudge and try to change some of our topics around smart buildings and building technology. Um, I hope that was helpful for you to understand some of the scope that's out there.
So it was so helpful. My undergraduate, or not undergraduate, my graduate independent project was actually in project management in the pharmaceutical company, in like the pharmaceutical industry. We actually looked at a lot of the parallels drawn from the construction field, and because like that's where project management really started to bud. So like I really appreciate like all of these kind of discussions. And I looked at some of your other rooms and clubs, and I'm excited to engage more with all of you. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Margie. Looking forward to connecting further. I should say 2 standards you should probably look into. Well standard, and why am I losing the other one? Fit well standard
Reset.
and reset. Yes, all 3. You should look into those. Those might be valuable if you're not aware of those already, around just more healthy buildings for people. So all right, guys. I'm really,
Awesome.
really
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome, Margie. We have some new people in the room. We have some old people in the audience. Not old people, but people that typically join. So thank you guys for consistently joining the conversation and supporting. Like I mentioned, we're going to be wrapping up. If you are interested in any of the prior points made in the conversation and reflecting on those, this is being live streamed. So you have the access to retrieve this on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitch, on Periscope, and LinkedIn. So if you just follow me on any of those platforms, you'll have access to this. But yeah, it's been really awesome getting to know each one of you who's joined us on the stage. And we're looking forward to continuing the discussion around smart cities next week. If you're interested in property technology, please join that club as well. We will be hosting a room tomorrow, 7 a.m. Central, and on Thursday mornings we typically talk about how to improve processes as it relates to actually carrying out building construction. We'll call it the Lean Construction Roundtable. We're going to be testing out some new room names in the near future. But that's what we'll be talking about tomorrow morning if you'd like to join us. So with that, we appreciate all of you so very much. Have an amazing rest of your Wednesday evening. And this is the Smart City Community. Join us next time.